The courthouse clerk handed Leslie the divorce papers with a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. Leslie's signature was still drying when Ronald grabbed her wrist. Wait. His voice had that edge she'd learned to recognize over 7 years, the one that meant he wanted something. I need you to do one more thing. Leslie looked at his hand on her wrist, then at his face. Handsome, expensive haircut. The kind of jaw that photographed well at charity galas. She used to trace that jawline with her fingers when they were younger. Back when she still believed he meant it when he said forever. Let go, Ronald, he did, but only to pull out his phone. Vivian wants proof. She needs to know you won't, that we're really done. Of course, Vivian, always Vivian. She wants you to swear it. He was already opening the camera app, angling it toward her face. On video, say you'll never contact me again. Around them, other couples waited in plastic chairs. A young pair held hands, nervous about their marriage license. An older woman dabbed her eyes with tissue, everyone pretending not to watch. Leslie felt something crack inside her chest. Not her heart. That had broken so many times it was mostly scar tissue now. This was different. This was the last thread of whatever had kept her tethered to the girl who'd loved him. Fine. She stood straight, looked directly into the camera. Her voice came out clear, steady, professional. The same voice she used when dosing anesthesia for a critical surgery. I, Leslie Bennett, swear I will never love Ronald Harrison again. I will never seek him out, never contact him, never see him again. If I break this vow, may I be struck by lightning and die a miserable death. The waiting area went quiet. Someone whispered, "Mistress Drama," behind a cupped hand. Ronald lowered the phone, looking satisfied. Good, that is good. He fumbled in his jacket pocket, pulled out a key ring. The metal caught the fluorescent light as he held it out. I got you the lake house. It is quiet, private. Nobody will bother you there. Leslie stared at the keys. She knew this house. 40 minutes outside the city, backing onto gray water and pine trees. She'd been there exactly once, when Margaret Harrison had hosted a family barbecue and made sure Leslie ate at the folding table on the lawn while everyone else sat on the deck. I'll come by once a month, Ronald continued. His voice dropped lower, almost gentle, the tone he used to use in bed. Vivian's going to be busy with her career. She won't need to know. You and her, one in the light, one in the dark. It is fair, isn't it? Fair, the word sat in her mouth like poison. She'd been 14 when the Harrisons took her in. 14, still having nightmares about the fire at Hope House, about smoke in her lungs and flames on her skin. Margaret Harrison had stood in the hospital room doorway in her Chanel suit and said, "We Harrisons never forget those who helped us." Only Leslie hadn't helped them. She'd just been there when they needed good PR after old Harrison's tax scandal. Photogenic orphan, tragic backstory, medical school ambitions. Perfect. She'd spent 15 years trying to repay a debt she'd never actually owed. Leslie? Ronald was still holding out the keys. Come on, don't make this harder than it needs to be. She looked at the keys one more time, then she turned and walked to the trash can by the water fountain. The keys made a hollow sound when they hit the bottom, landing on top of someone's coffee cup and a crumpled tissue. Leslie. She kept walking. Through the security checkpoint, past the young couple still holding hands, out into the parking lot where the November air bit at her face. Her phone buzzed. Ronald, don't be childish. Where are you going to go? She deleted the message and opened her email instead. The ticket confirmation from last night was still there. 1 Janway flight to Zurich, departing in 6 hours. Dr. Sebastian Cross would be waiting at the airport. Sister Mary needed surgery. a complicated procedure that required the best anesthesiologist Sebastian could find. And he'd found her. Leslie pulled her suitcase from the trunk of her car, the used Honda she'd bought with her own money, not the Mercedes Ronald had wanted to buy her. So people don't think I'm cheap. Everything she actually cared about was already in this bag: medical journals, her grandmother's stethoscope from before the car accident, the stuffed rabbit from Hope House that smelled like smoke, no matter how many times she washed it. Ronald called twice while she drove to the airport. She let it ring. By the time she parked in Long Dan Term, he'd sent 7 texts. You're being dramatic. I'm trying to be generous here. At least take the house key. You have nowhere else to go. Fine, ignore me, but you'll come back. You always do. At last, Wayne made her laugh. Actually laugh there in the parking garage with her suitcase at her feet and the smell of exhaust all around, because he was right. She always, when he forgot her birthday, she came back. When he introduced her as the family friend at the Harrison Medical Devices investor meeting, she came back. When she found the text from Vivian, miss you, can't wait until you're finally free, she came back. But that was the old Leslie, the one who believed gratitude was the same as love. The airport terminal was busy with Thanksgiving travelers, families with children, couples in matching sweaters, businessmen typing on laptops. Leslie checked her bag and got her boarding pass from a tired Zan-looking agent who didn't look at her face. She was walking toward security when she saw them. Ronald and Vivian, coming through the international arrivals gate. Vivian was perfect. Blonde hair in a low ponytail, designer luggage, a cashmere coat that probably cost more than Leslie's monthly salary. She was laughing at something Ronald said, her hand on his arm, comfortable, like she belonged there, like she'd always belonged there. Leslie turned toward the nearest stairwell, but Ronald had already seen her. His expression shifted from surprise to anger in half a second. Leslie, he was walking fast now. Leslie, stop. She made it into the stairwell before he caught up, grabbing her arm hard enough to hurt. What the hell are you doing here? Ronald's fingers dug into her bicep, pulling her deeper into the stairwell. The door swung shut behind them, muffling the terminal noise. Leslie looked pointedly at his hand. You're hurting me. Answer the question. Are you following me? The absurdity of it almost made her laugh again. Following you. Vivian just landed. We're going to Napa for the weekend. He said it like an accusation, like Leslie had somehow interrupted his plans just by existing in the same airport. If you're trying to make a scene, I'm trying to catch a flight. She pulled her arm free. There'd be a bruise there tomorrow, purple fingerprints on her skin. She'd seen enough of those over the years, usually on her wrist where her sleeve would hide them. My gate's the other direction. Bullshit. You don't have money for a flight. You quit your job, remember. I took a leave of absence. The words tasted bitter. Margaret Harrison had suggested it, strongly suggested it. Give yourself time to heal from this difficult divorce, dear. What she'd meant was disappear for a while so people stop asking questions. Ronald's eyes narrowed. A leave in absence, exactly are you flying tea? Your rope? Your rope? He repeated it like she'd said the moon. For what? Some kind of grief vacation, a surgery that stopped him. His hand, which had been reaching for her again, froze mid-zen air. What surgery? I'm consulting on a case, thoracic reconstruction with anesthesia complications. The patient. She stopped. He didn't actually care about the patient. He never had. When she'd tried to tell him about her work, about the delicate balance of keeping someone alive while surgeons opened their chest, he'd always changed the subject. It is complicated. You expect me to believe that someone flew you to Europe to, watch them do surgery, to perform the anesthesia. They requested me specifically. Sebastian had requested her, Dr. Sebastian Cross, who'd published 4 papers in the last year alone, who ran the cardiac surgery program at one of Europe's most prestigious hospitals, who'd written in his email, "I need the best." And that is you, Leslie. She'd cried when she read that, sat in her car in the hospital parking lot, and cried because someone, Agnon, had called her the best at something. Ronald was staring at her like she'd grown a second head. "You're serious. Why would I lie?" "Because you." He stopped, running his hand through his hair. The gesture he always did when he was frustrated, when things weren't going according to plan. "You don't just get to leave. We need to talk about how this is going to work. We signed the papers 3 hours ago. There is nothing to work out." "The hell there isn't." His voice dropped. That dangerous quiet that meant he was really angry now. "You think you can just walk away from 7 years from our family?" "Your family," Leslie corrected. "I was never family. I was the charity case who got lucky. That is not." He pressed his lips together. "My mother cares about you. We all do. You're being ungrateful." There it was, the word that had kept her trapped for 15 years. Ungrateful. Ronald. Vivian's voice echoed in the stairwell. She was on the landing above them, looking down with an expression Leslie couldn't quite read. "What is taking so long? Our car's waiting." Ronald's whole posture changed. His shoulders straightened, his face smoothed into the pleasant mask he wore in public. "Just ran into an old friend. I'll be right there." Old friend. Not my ex-Dan wife. Not even Leslie. Vivian came down 3 steps, her heels clicking on concrete. Up close, she was even more beautiful. Delicate features, clear skin, the kind of effortless elegance that came from growing up with money and confidence. She looked at Leslie the way you'd look at something slightly unpleasant you found on your shoe. "Leslie," her voice was warm, sympathetic, perfectly calibrated. "I heard about the divorce. I'm so sorry. It must be devastating." The words were right. The delivery was flawless. But Leslie had spent enough time in operating rooms to recognize a performance when she saw one. "I'll survive," Leslie said. "Of course you will. You're so strong." Vivian's hand found Ronald's arm, a casual gesture of ownership. "Ronald was just telling me how worried he is about you, about where you'll go, what you'll do. He has such a big heart." Leslie looked at Ronald, at the man who'd held her on their wedding night, and whispered, "I wish you were her," who'd come home smelling like Vivian's perfume and acted offended when Leslie noticed, who'd told his mother that Leslie's salary could go into the Family Medical Foundation, the one that just happened to keep Harrison Medical Devices afloat when the quarterly numbers looked bad. Big heart. "He does," Leslie agreed. "You're lucky to have him." Something flickered across Vivian's face. Surprise. Maybe she'd expected tears, probably, begging. The kind of scene that would confirm everything she already believed about Leslie. "We really need to go," Vivian said to Ronald. "The driver's been waiting 20 minutes. Ronald was still staring at Leslie. "We're in Europe. Does it matter?" "Just." He stepped closer, lowering his voice so Vivian wouldn't hear. "Don't do anything stupid, okay? You're upset. You're not thinking straight. When you get back, we can figure something out." Leslie felt her phone buzz in her pocket. Probably the airline, sending her boarding notification. Gate C Sechar. Zurich flight boarding in 40 minutes. "I'm thinking very clearly," she said, maybe for the first time in years. She walked past him, past Vivian, with her perfect hair and her perfect coat. The stairwell door was heavy, but she got it open. Behind her, she heard Ronald say something sharp, heard Vivian's soothing response. Then the door closed and they were gone. The terminal was even more crowded now. Leslie walked towards security, her carried Zan on bumping against her leg. Her arm throbbed where Ronald had grabbed her. Her head ached, her eyes burned, but her feet kept moving. At the security checkpoint, she emptied her pockets. Phone, wallet, the hospital ID badge she'd forgotten to turn in during her leave of absence. The TSA agent waved her through the scanner. No alarms. No one stopped her. On the other side, she checked her phone. The boarding notification was there, like she'd expected. But there was also an email sent 10 minutes ago. From Sebastian Cross, MD, PhD, subject, looking forward to seeing you. Leslie's sister Mary is stable and ready for surgery. The team here is excellent, but they specifically asked for you. Apparently your reputation precedes you. I told them you were the best anesthesiologist I'd ever worked with. I might have also mentioned you once saved a patient's life when 3 attending surgeons had given up. They were impressed. I was not surprised. Safe travels. I'll be at the airport with terrible Swiss coffee and better conversation. Sebastian, Leslie read it twice. Then a third time, the best anesthesiologist I'd ever worked with. She'd never met Sebastian Cross. They'd exchanged emails, coordinated schedules, discussed Sister Mary's case in technical detail, but they'd never worked together. How could he possibly know, unless her hands started shaking? She sat down hard in the nearest chair, her suitcase tipping over beside her. Unless Sebastian Cross had been watching her career for a long time. Unless he'd read every paper she'd published, tracked every surgery she'd assisted on. Unless he knew her not as Ronald's ex-Dan wife or the Harrison family's charity project, but as Dr. Leslie Bennett. Someone bumped her shoulder, apologizing. The terminal moved around her. Hundreds of people going to hundreds of places. Leslie sat very still, holding her phone like it might disappear if she let go. Gate C Sachar was on the other side of the terminal. She could make it in 15 minutes if she walked fast. In 18 hours, she'd be in Zurich. Sister Mary would be in Prix-en-Opie. Sebastian Cross would be there with his terrible coffee and his kind emails and his complete, inexplicable faith in her abilities. And Ronald would be in Napa with Vivian, probably not thinking about her at all. Leslie stood up, grabbed her suitcase, started walking. Behind her, her phone buzzed one more time. Ronald, you'll come back, She didn't even look at it. The Zurich airport smelled like chocolate and expensive leather. Leslie had slept through most of the flight, exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with time zones. When she woke, her arm still ached where Ronald had grabbed her. She'd covered the bruises with her jacket sleeve before going through customs. The arrivals hall was pristine, all glass and steel and efficient Swiss design. Leslie scanned the crowd holding welcome signs, taxi drivers, tour guides, families waiting for relatives. Then she saw him. Tall, dark hair going silver at the temples, holding a tablet that read, Dr. Bennett, in neat handwriting. He wore a gray sweater and jeans, looked nothing like the formal headshots on the hospital website, but she recognized him anyway from the way he stood. Straight and backed, alert, like a soldier who'd never quite left the battlefield. Sebastian. He looked up, and his whole face changed. Not a smile exactly. Something quieter, deeper, like recognition. Leslie. He said her name carefully, like he'd practiced it. You look. He stopped, his eyes catching on something. Her face, probably. She hadn't bothered with makeup on the plane. Tired, long flight, long week. Right. He reached for her suitcase before she could protest. The car's this way, unless you need coffee first. There is a decent place near Terminal 2. Well, decent by airport standards. Swiss coffee is. Sebastian. He stopped walking. It is you, Leslie said quietly. "You're Sebastian Cross." Something flickered in his expression. "You sound surprised." "I thought, when you emailed about Sister Mary needing surgery, I assumed you were just a colleague. Someone who'd heard about my work, needed a consult." She was talking too fast, the exhaustion making her words tumble out. "But you wrote like you knew me, like we'd worked together before." "We have." He started walking again, slower this time. "You don't remember." "I've never been to Europe. I've never." "Hope House," Sebastian said. 20 years ago, you were 12. I was 14. Sister Mary ran the orphanage." Leslie stopped moving entirely, around them. Travelers flowed past, like water around a stone. Smoke in her lungs and flames eating the wooden stairs, and someone pulling her out of her room and down the hallway and out into the night air where the ambulances were screaming. "The Harrisons told me Sister Mary saved me," Leslie said slowly. "Margaret Harrison said," she said, "Sister Mary pulled me out of the fire. That is why they took me in, to honor her sacrifice." Sebastian's jaw tightened. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, "Let's get to the car. Sister Mary's waiting." The hospital was 40 minutes outside Zurich, nestled in the mountains like something from a postcard. Sebastian drove a dark sedan with heated seats and classical music playing softly. He didn't try to make conversation, just let her sit with her thoughts while the city gave way to forest. Leslie watched the trees pass by, tried not to think about what he'd said about Hope House, tried not to wonder what else the Harrisons had lied about. "She is nervous," Sebastian said finally, as they pulled into the hospital parking garage. "About the surgery, but more nervous about seeing you. Why, you'll understand when you talk to her." The hospital was modern, expensive, Jan-looking, marble floors and abstract art on the walls. Sebastian led her through a maze of corridors, nodding at nurses who greeted him by name. They clearly respected him here, maybe even liked him. Sister Mary's room was on the cardiac floor, private, with a window overlooking the mountains, and there she was. Older, smaller, her hair completely white now, but still the same woman who'd bandaged Leslie's scraped knees and read bedtime stories and made sure every child at Hope House knew they were loved, even if the world had forgotten them. "Leslie Danbert." Sister Mary's voice cracked. She was crying already, reaching out with trembling hands. "Oh, my girl, look at you." Leslie crossed the room without thinking, sat on the edge of the bed, let Sister Mary pull her into a hug that smelled like lavender and antiseptic. The old woman was so small now, so fragile. Hard to believe she'd once seemed so strong. "I'm here," Leslie whispered. "I'm going to take care of you. The surgery, Dr. Cross says, it is complicated, but I've done hundreds of these. You're going to be fine." "That is not what I'm worried about." Sister Mary pulled back, cupping Leslie's face in her hands, studying her the way she used to when Leslie came to her office with nightmares. "You look sad, baby. What happened?" "Nothing. I'm tired from the flight." "Liar," but she said it fondly. "Sebastian, get us some tea. The good kind, not the hospital swill." Sebastian nodded and left, closing the door quietly behind him. Alone with Sister Mary, Leslie felt something crack inside her chest. The same thing that had cracked in the courthouse, only deeper this time, older. "I got divorced," she heard herself say. 3 days ago, I flew straight here, the Harrison boy. You remember. I remember everything about you, Leslie Danbert." Sister Mary's thumb brushed Leslie's cheek. Catching a tear Leslie hadn't realized she'd shed. "I remember when they came to take you from the hospital. That woman in her fancy suit, talking about gratitude and family legacy. I wanted to say no. Why didn't you? Because you were 12 and traumatized and needed a home, because I was an old woman with 20 other children to care for, because they promised you'd have everything. education, stability, a future. Sister Mary's voice hardened. They promised you'd be happy. I was, Leslie lied. For a while. And now I'm here. Sister Mary was quiet for a long moment. Then, the fire. What did they tell you about the fire? Leslie's stomach dropped. You pulled me out. Margaret Harrison said, you were a hero. I was unconscious in the chapel when it started. Smoke inhalation. The firefighters had to carry me out. Sister Mary's hands tightened on Leslie's. Sebastian saved you, baby. He was 14 years old, and he ran into that burning building and carried you down 2 flights of stairs. He has the scars to prove it. The room tilted. Leslie gripped the bed rail. What? His left arm, burns from his shoulder to his elbow. He was in the hospital for 3 months. Sister Mary's voice was gentle but firm. When he woke up, you were already gone. The Harrisons had moved you to their private hospital, then to their home. By the time Sebastian was released, you disappeared. Leslie couldn't breathe. Why didn't anyone tell me? I wrote to Margaret Harrison, explained what really happened, asked if Sebastian could visit you just once, so you'd know the truth. Sister Mary's expression went hard. She wrote back saying it would be emotionally destabilizing for a traumatized child to process conflicting narratives. Said it was better if you remembered me as the hero cleaner that way. Cleaner, more useful. A story the Harrisons could tell at charity galas. We took in the orphan saved by a heroic nun. We're such good people. The door opened. Sebastian came back with 3 paper cups of tea, saw Leslie's face, and stopped. You told her, he said to Sister Mary. She deserved to know. Sebastian set the tea down carefully. When he moved, Leslie saw it, the way he favored his left arm slightly, the stiffness in his shoulder. How had she not noticed before? Can I see? Her voice came out hoarse. Sebastian hesitated. Then he pulled off his sweater. The scars were worse than she'd imagined. Thick, ropey tissue from his shoulder to his elbow, the kind of burns that went deep, that never fully healed. In some places, the skin was shiny and tight. In others, it was discolored, mottled. Oh God, Leslie stood. Crossed to him, her hands hovering over the scars without quite touching. Sebastian, I don't. His voice was quiet. Don't apologize. I'd do it again. You were 14. You were 12, and you were screaming. He said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. I couldn't leave you there. Leslie's vision blurred. She blinked hard, trying to clear it. But the tears came anyway, fast and hot and unstoppable. Sebastian caught her before she fell. His arms came around her, careful, steady, the way you'd hold something precious and breakable. He smelled like soap and coffee and something else, something that made her think of safety. I've got you, he murmured. I've got you, Leslie, she cried into his shoulder. For the fire and the lies and the 15 years she'd spent being grateful to the wrong people. For Ronald and the lake house key in the trash can and the bruises on her arm, for every time she'd been made small and convinced herself it was love. Sister Mary watched from the bed, wiping her own eyes. When Leslie finally pulled back, Sebastian's shirt was soaked. She started to apologize. But he shook his head. Better? No. She laughed, wet and shaky. But thank you. I've been looking for you, Sebastian said quietly, for 20 years. Every hospital, every medical conference. I knew you'd become a doctor. Sister Mary always said you would. His thumb brushed a tear from her cheek. Now that I've found you, I'm not letting go. It should have sounded possessive controlling. Like Ronald's, one in the light, one in the dark. But it didn't. It sounded like a promise. Sister Mary's surgery was scheduled for 2 a.m. the next morning. Leslie spent the night in the hospital's physician quarters, a small but comfortable room with a view of the mountains. She should have slept. She'd done hundreds of these procedures. Thoracic reconstruction with cardiac complications was complex, but not impossible. Not for her. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw Sebastian's scars. At CAM, she gave up and went to the hospital cafeteria. The night shift staff nodded at her as she poured coffee that was, as Sebastian had promised, terrible. She was adding her third sugar packet when someone sat down across from her. Sebastian, looking like he hadn't slept either. "Couldn't stay away?" Leslie asked. "I'm the lead surgeon. I'm supposed to be here." He paused. "Also, I was worried about you. I'm fine. You're drinking cafeteria coffee at 4 in the morning. No one who is fine does that." He slid a paper bag across the table. "I brought real breakfast. There is a bakery near my apartment that opens at 3. Inside the bag, fresh croissants, still warm. The smell alone made Leslie's stomach growl. "You didn't have to do this," she said. "I know." He watched her take a bite, something soft in his expression. "But I wanted to." They ate in comfortable silence. Around them, the hospital woke up slowly. Nurses changing shifts, residents stumbling in for coffee, the distant beep of monitors. Leslie had always loved this time of morning in hospital, the quiet before the chaos. "Tell me about the surgery," Sebastian said finally. "What are you worried about?" "Her heart." Leslie pulled out her tablet, brought up Sister Mary's scans. "The valve replacement is straightforward, but her ejection fraction is low, 30%. If we can't maintain adequate perfusion during the procedure, we will." Sebastian leaned forward, studying the scans. His finger traced the outline of Sister Mary's heart. "See here, the tissue's still viable. We go in through the left anterior thoracotomy, minimize the trauma. You keep her stable, I'll be fast. 2 hours, maybe less. And if there are complications, then we handle them." He looked up, met her eyes, together. Together, the words settled something in Leslie's chest. "I've been reading your papers," she admitted. "The minimally invasive valve replacement technique you developed. It is brilliant. I had good motivation." His voice was quiet. "Sister Mary raised me. When she got sick, I couldn't let her die because the surgery was too risky. So I made it less risky. You invented an entire surgical technique to save her. You flew across an ocean." He said it like it was the same thing, like they were the same kind of person, the kind who didn't give up on the people they loved. Leslie's phone buzzed. She ignored it. It buzzed again. Sebastian glanced at it. "You can check that." "It is nothing, Leslie." She sighed and pulled out her phone. 7 missed calls from Ronald, 12 texts. She scrolled through them, her jaw tightening with each one. "Where are you, Leslie? This isn't funny. My mother is worried. Call her. Fine, be childish. But you're making a mistake. Vivian says I should just let you go." "Maybe she is right. Are you seriously ignoring me?" "I talked to the hospital. They said you're on leave." "Where the hell did you go?" "The last one had come in 10 minutes ago. I'm calling the police. You could be in danger." "Ex-Dan husband?" Sebastian asked. "How did you know?" "You have the same look Sister Mary gets when she talks about the bishop who tried to shut down Hope House." He paused. "Want me to handle it? Handle it how?" "I'm very good at making people go away." He said it mildly, but there was steel underneath. "Professionally speaking." Leslie almost laughed. "He is not dangerous, just persistent. Persistent men are the most dangerous kind." Sebastian's expression went cold. "The ones who think they own you." Before Leslie could respond, her phone rang. Not Ronald this time, Margaret Harrison. She stared at the screen. Margaret never called. She sent emails through her assistant, formal and distant. A phone call meant something had gone wrong. I should take this, Leslie said. Sebastian nodded and stood, gathering their trash. I'll be in Pre-Dan OP. Come find me when you're ready. Leslie waited until he was gone before answering. Leslie, Margaret's voice was crisp, controlled. Where are you? Europe. A pause. Europe. I'm consulting on a surgery. Without informing anyone, without discussing it with the family. Margaret's tone sharpened. Ronald is beside himself. He thinks you've had some kind of breakdown. I'm working. That is not a breakdown. You quit your job. I took a leave of absence. There is a difference. And disappeared without a word. Do you have any idea how this looks? The press is already asking questions about the divorce. If they find out you fled the country, I didn't flee. I was invited to consult on a complex case by one of Europe's leading cardiac surgeons. Leslie kept her voice level, professional. The same tone she used when explaining anesthesia risks to anxious families. It is an honor, actually. Margaret was quiet for a moment. Then, who is the surgeon, Dr. Sebastian Cross? Another pause, longer this time. I see. Something in those two words made Leslie's skin prickle. You know him. I know of him. He has been quite persistent over the years. Sending letters, making inquiries about your whereabouts. Margaret's voice went cold. I had my assistant handle it. I assumed he was some kind of stalker. Leslie's hand tightened on the phone. He was looking for me because he saved my life. Because you lied about what happened at Hope House. I protected you from an emotionally complicated situation. You were a traumatized child who needed stability. Not the truth. Not confusion. Margaret's tone turned sharp. That boy was obsessed with you, Leslie. Following you around Hope House, always watching. It wasn't healthy. When the fire happened, I saw an opportunity to give you a fresh start, away from all that. Leslie felt sick. He was 14, and he pulled me out of a burning building. That is not obsession, that is heroism. He was a troubled child from a broken home who fixated on you. I did what was best for everyone involved. Margaret paused. Including him, I paid for his medical school. Did you know that? Full scholarship to Johns Hopkins. All I asked was that he leave you alone. The cafeteria suddenly felt too small, too hot. Leslie stood, pacing to the window. Outside, the sun was starting to rise over the mountains. You paid him to stay away from me. I invested in his future. He has done quite well for himself, hasn't he? Top of his field, prestigious position. He should be grateful. Grateful. That word again. I have to go, Leslie said. The surgery starts in an hour. Leslie, listen to me. This man has been searching for you for 20 years. That is not normal. That is obsessive, whatever he has told you about the past. He told me the truth, which is more than you ever did. I'm trying to protect you. No. Leslie's voice came out harder than she'd intended. You're trying to control me the way you've been controlling me since I was 12 years old. But I'm done, Margaret. I'm done being grateful. I'm done being your charity project. I'm done. She hung up before Margaret could respond. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against the window, feeling the cool glass against her palms. Breathed slowly, counting backwards from 10 the way she did before difficult surgeries. When she turned around, Sebastian was standing in the doorway. How much of that did you hear? Leslie asked. Enough? He crossed to her, his expression unreadable. She paid for medical school. I didn't know you knew. I didn't until 30 seconds ago. I would have found you anyway. His voice was quiet, intense. With or without her money. I never stopped looking. That is what she said, that you were obsessed. I was. He didn't flinch from the word I am. I've spent 20 years wondering if you were okay, if you were happy, if you even remembered me. When I finally tracked you down 6 months ago and saw you were married to a Harrison, his jaw tightened. I almost didn't contact you. Thought maybe Margaret was right. Maybe you were better off without me. What changed your mind? I saw you at a medical conference. You were presenting on anesthesia protocols for high-DAN risk cardiac patients. You were brilliant, confident, everything I'd imagined you'd become. He paused. And you looked miserable. Leslie's throat tightened. I was. I know. I could see it in your eyes. His hand came up, hesitated, then gently touched her cheek. The same look you had when you were 12 and trying to pretend you weren't scared of the dark. I'm not that girl anymore. No, you're stronger now, braver. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. But you're still scared, and I still want to help. The PA system crackled to life. Dr. Cross, Dr. Bennett, please report to Orfu Sen. Patient is ready for pre-DAN OP. Sebastian's hand dropped, ready. Leslie took a breath, thought about Sister Mary waiting in pre-DAN OP, about the surgery ahead, about everything that had brought her to this moment. Yes, she said. Let's go save her life. The operating room was cold and bright, every surface gleaming under the surgical lights. Leslie had scrubbed in 1,000 times, but this felt different. Sister Mary on the table, already sedated. Sebastian across from her, eyes focused above his surgical mask. The nursing team moving with practiced efficiency around them. Vitals? Leslie asked, checking the monitors. BP yoyoba over tishulio. Heart rate 97. Osati 97%, the nurse reported. She is stable. Good. Leslie adjusted the anesthesia flow, her hands steady despite the knot in her stomach. Let's keep her that way. Sebastian met her eyes across the table. You've got her? I've got her. He nodded once, then turned to his surgical team, scalpel. Leslie had watched hundreds of surgeons work. The good ones were confident, the great ones were artists. Sebastian was something else entirely, precise, economical, every movement deliberate. No wasted motion, no hesitation. The thoracotomy incision was clean, minimal. He worked between the ribs instead of breaking them. The technique he'd pioneered, less trauma, faster recovery. Leslie watched the monitors, adjusting medication as needed, keeping Sister Mary in that perfect balance between too deep and not deep enough. Retracting, Sebastian said. His hands were inside Sister Mary's chest now, exposing the heart. There is more scarring than the scans showed, from the rheumatic fever when she was young. Can you work around it? Leslie asked. Yes, but it'll take longer. He glanced at the monitors. How is she doing? Stable. Take your time. Time stretched in thee, or the way it always did. Minutes felt like hours. Leslie's world narrowed to the numbers on the screen, the rhythm of the ventilator, the subtle changes in Sister Mary's vitals that told her when to adjust the medication. Aortic valve is severely calcified, Sebastian reported. Removing it now. Leslie watched his hands. Despite the scars on his left arm, there was no tremor, no weakness. If anything, he seemed stronger for them. Like the fire had burned away everything soft and left only steel. How long have you been planning this? Leslie asked quietly, finding me. Sebastian didn't look up from the valve. 20 years, give or take. That is a long time to hold on to something. Not when it is the only thing that matters. He sutured carefully, his voice calm. I used to have nightmares about the fire. about not getting to you in time. When I woke up in the hospital and they told me you were gone." His hands paused for just a second. "I thought I'd failed you. You saved my life, and then lost you anyway." He resumed suturing. Felt like the same thing. The monitors beeped steadily. Sister Mary's heart rate held at Yosh's blood pressure. "Good. Everything exactly where it should be." "When did you find me?" Leslie asked. 6 months ago. Medical conference in Boston you were presenting." Sebastian placed the new valve, checking the alignment. "You wore a blue dress and you kept pushing your hair behind your ear when you got nervous. Same thing you used to do at Hope House." Leslie felt her chest tighten. "Why didn't you say something?" "I saw the ring on your finger, researched your husband, found out he was a Harrison. 20 years of searching, and he stops because of a ring. That is not romantic. That is someone who respects boundaries more than his own heartbreak." Meanwhile, Ronald couldn't respect a divorce decree. The contrast writes itself. Sebastian's voice went flat. "Figured Margaret had won after all. She didn't win. She just convinced me I had no other choice." "We always have choices, Leslie. Sometimes we just can't see them." He tested the new valve, checking for leaks. "Suturing the annulus now. Another 30 minutes. 30 minutes, Leslie adjusted the anesthetic. Watched Sister Mary's vitals. Everything was going perfectly. Too perfectly, maybe. In her experience, perfect surgeries were the ones where disaster could strike without warning. "Tell me about Hope House," she said. "What I don't..." Sebastian was quiet for a moment, focused on his sutures then. "You were the smallest kid there, barely spoke when you first arrived. Sister Mary said you'd been in 3 foster homes before they sent you to us." "I don't remember that. You were 6. They don't expect you to." Another suture, precise and clean. "You used to hide in the library. I'd find you there after lights out, reading by flashlight. Medical textbooks mostly. Anything you could find about how bodies worked. Even then, Sister Mary said you were going to be a doctor someday. I didn't believe her until I saw you splint another kid's broken finger using popsicle sticks and medical tape." He glanced up briefly, and she could see the smile in his eyes even behind the mask. "You were 8 years old and you made that kid stop crying just by explaining exactly what was broken and how it would heal. You had a gift." Leslie's throat tightened. "I don't remember any of this. The fire took a lot of memories, smoke inhalation trauma, your brain trying to protect you." Sebastian returned his attention to the valve. "But I remember all of it." The OR door opened. A nurse stepped in, apologetic. "Dr. Cross, sorry to interrupt. There is a phone call for Dr. Bennett. They say it is urgent." Leslie didn't look away from the monitors. "I'm in surgery, take a message," they said. The nurse hesitated. "They said it is her husband, and if she doesn't take the call, he is getting on a plane." Sebastian's hands stilled, just for a second, but Leslie saw it. "Your ex-Stan husband." "Apparently, he doesn't understand what ex means. Want me to talk to him?" Your elbow down deep in Sister Mary's chest. "I think you're busy. I can multitask." But he was already moving again, closing up the pericardium. "Tell whoever's on the phone that Dr. Bennett is unavailable. If they have a problem with that, they can speak to hospital administration." The nurse nodded and left. "Thank you," Leslie said quietly. "For what? For not making me choose between being here and dealing with him." Sebastian looked up then, really looked at her. "You shouldn't have to choose. Anyone who makes you choose between your work and their ego isn't worth your time." Ronald would disagree. "Ronald," Sebastian said carefully, "sounds like an asshole." Leslie laughed despite herself. "He has his moments." "I'm sure he does. I'm also sure you're better off without him. Sebastian checked his work one final time. Valve replacement complete. Closing now. The rest of the surgery went smoothly. Sebastian closed the incision with the same meticulous care he'd shown throughout. Each suture perfectly placed. Leslie brought Sister Mary slowly out of anesthesia, watching her vitals climb back to normal ranges. When Sister Mary's eyes finally fluttered open, the first thing she saw was Leslie's face. Did I die? Sister Mary's voice was hoarse from the breathing tube. Not even close, Leslie said. You've got a brand new valve and a very smug surgeon who wants you to know he is brilliant. I am brilliant, Sebastian said from somewhere behind her, but also humble. Sister Mary smiled weakly. Liar. They wheeled her to recovery. Leslie stayed by her side while Sebastian handled the post-op paperwork. The nursing staff moved around them efficiently, checking vitals, adjusting medications, doing all the small, important things that kept patients alive after major surgery. You're crying, Sister Mary observed. Leslie touched her face. She was sorry. Don't be sorry. Come here. Leslie leaned down, and Sister Mary pulled her into an awkward hug, careful of all the tubes and wires. I'm so proud of you, Sister Mary whispered. My brilliant girl, look what you became. I'm just a doctor. You're not just anything. You're extraordinary. Sister Mary pulled back, studying her face. And you're free now from all of it. I don't feel free. You will. Give it time. Sister Mary's eyes drifted to the doorway where Sebastian stood watching them. He never stopped looking for you. Did you know that? I know. Good. Don't let that one go. She squeezed Leslie's hand. He is earned you. Leslie wanted to say that she wasn't something to be earned, that she wasn't a prize or a reward. But looking at Sebastian in the doorway, at the way he watched her like she was something precious and breakable and strong all at once. Maybe Sister Mary was right. Maybe some people did earn each other through fire and years and refusing to give up, even when it would. Sebastian crossed to them, checked Sister Mary's vitals on the monitor. How is our patient? Tired, Sister Mary admitted. But alive thanks to you too, thank Leslie. I just did the cutting. She is the one who kept you breathing. Team effort, Leslie said. The best kind. Sebastian's hand found hers, squeezed once brief, professional. But his eyes said more. Leslie's phone buzzed in her pocket. She knew without looking it was Ronald again. The calls and texts would keep coming until she dealt with it, until she made him understand that this time she wasn't coming back. I need to make a call, she said. Sebastian nodded. I'll stay with her. Leslie stepped into the hallway, found a quiet corner, and finally called Ronald back. He answered on the first ring. Where the hell are you? Working. Bullshit. I called your hospital. They said you're on leave. I'm consulting in Europe. I told you that. For who? Doing what? His voice was sharp, demanding, the tone he used when he expected immediate compliance. Leslie took a breath. That is not your concern anymore, Ronald. We're divorced. You're still He stopped. You can't just disappear. I didn't disappear. I left. There is a difference. My mother, your mother, Leslie interrupted, has controlled enough of my life. I'm done letting the Harrisons decide who I am and what I deserve. Silence, then. You're making a mistake, maybe. But it is my mistake to make, Leslie. She hung up, turned off her phone, stood in the quiet hospital hallway, and felt something shift inside her chest. Something that had been locked tight for 15 years, finally opening when she went back to recovery. Sebastian was sitting beside Sister Mary's bed, reading her vitals aloud in a soft voice. Sister Mary had fallen asleep, but he kept talking anyway. the way you do with patients in recovery, keeping them tethered to the world with the sound of your voice. He looked up when Leslie entered. "Everything okay? Getting there?" Leslie said, and for the first time in a very long time, she actually believed it. Sister Mary stayed in the ICU for 3 days. Leslie barely left the hospital. She slept in the physician quarters, ate meals in the cafeteria, and spent every free moment at Sister Mary's bedside. Sebastian did the same, the two of them falling into an easy rhythm, trading shifts, discussing treatment plans, making terrible jokes about hospital coffee. On the 4th day, Sister Mary was moved to a regular room. On the 5th day, she demanded real food and a shower. On the 6th day, she announced she was ready to go home. "Absolutely not," Sebastian said, checking her chart. "You need at least another week of monitoring. I need my own bed and my own tea and my cat, who is probably staging a revolt without me." Sister Mary fixed him with the same look she'd used when he was 14 and trying to argue his way out of doing homework. "I'm going home, Sebastian. The question is whether you're going to help me or if I'm calling a taxi." Sebastian looked at Leslie. "Back me up here." Leslie bit her lip. "Her vitals are good. No signs of infection or complications. Technically, she could be discharged with home care." "Traitor," Sebastian muttered. "But," Leslie continued, "she'd need someone with medical training staying with her at least for the first week." "I'll hire a nurse," Sister Mary said. "I'll stay with you," Leslie said. Both Sebastian and Sister Mary turned to look at her. "You have a job," Sister Mary said. "A life. You can't just." "I'm on leave, and my life is currently," Leslie trailed off, "complicated." "Understatement of the century," Sebastian said quietly. Sister Mary studied her for a long moment. Then, "All right. But I'm putting you to work. The rectory needs painting, and the garden is a disaster. I'm a cardiac anesthesiologist, not a handyman. You're also my goddaughter, and goddaughters paint rooms." Sister Mary smiled. "Besides, you could use some time away from hospitals. When's the last time you had a vacation?" Leslie couldn't remember. The Harrisons didn't take vacations. They took strategic retreats to network with important people. Ronald had always been too busy with the law firm. Even their honeymoon had been cut short for a case. "I'll take that silence as a never," Sister Mary said. "It is settled then, Sebastian. Discharge me, Leslie. Pack your things. We're going home." Sister Mary's home turned out to be a small stone cottage attached to a centuries-old church in the mountains. Ivy climbed the walls, and the garden was indeed a disaster, overgrown with wildflowers and herbs that had gone rogue without her there to tend them. Inside, it smelled like old books and lavender. Every surface was covered with plants or religious icons or framed photos of children. Hope House children. Leslie realized decades worth of them. "This is you," Sister Mary said, pointing to a photo on the mantel. Leslie picked it up, a little girl with dark hair and serious eyes, standing between Sister Mary and Sebastian, younger, skinnier, but unmistakably him. His arm was around the little girl's shoulders, protective. Both of them were smiling. "I remember this," Leslie said slowly. "We just won the science fair. Sebastian built a model heart that actually pumped water through tubes." "You designed the circulatory system," Sebastian said from the doorway. He'd brought in Sister Mary's suitcase, was watching Leslie with that same careful expression. "I just did the construction. We were a good team. We still are." Sister Mary cleared her throat. "I'm going to lie down. Leslie, my room is upstairs on the right. The guest room is on the left. Sebastian, you know where everything is." She disappeared up the narrow staircase, leaving Leslie and Sebastian alone in the small living room. "You don't have to stay," Leslie said. "I can handle this. I know you can, but I want to. Sebastian set down the suitcase. Unless you want me to leave. No. The word came out too fast. No, it is nice, having you here. Nice. He smiled slightly. I'll take it. Leslie set down the photo, suddenly restless. Can I ask you something? Anything? Why didn't you try harder to find me before 6 months ago? I mean, Margaret said you sent letters. But I sent 53 letters over 20 years, Sebastian said quietly. To the Harrison house, to hospitals where I thought you might work, to medical schools. Not one was ever answered. He crossed to the window, looking out at the overgrown garden. After a while, I convinced myself you'd moved on, that you had a good life, and I was just a ghost from your past, that you didn't need haunting you. I never got any letters. I know that now, Margaret made sure of it. He turned back to face her. When I finally tracked you down at that conference, I almost didn't approach you. You looked so put Jan together, so successful. I thought maybe she'd been right. Maybe you were better off without me. What changed your mind? You dropped your notes. I helped you pick them up, and you didn't recognize me. He said it simply, but Leslie heard the pain underneath. You looked right at me and saw a stranger. That is when I knew whatever life you'd built, it wasn't whole. Because I remembered you, Leslie, every detail, and you'd forgotten me completely. Leslie's throat tightened. The fire took a lot of my memories. I know. That is not your fault. Sebastian crossed to her, stopped just close enough that she could feel his warmth. But I decided that day I was going to get you back, not force it, not manipulate you the way the Harrisons did. Just be there, be someone you could rely on. And if you never remembered, if you never wanted more than just a colleague, he shrugged, that would be enough? Would it? No, he said it honestly, but I would have accepted it. Leslie reached up, touched the collar of his shirt where she knew the scars were hidden. Can I see them again, the burns? Sebastian's jaw tightened. Leslie, please. He hesitated, then unbuttoned his shirt, shrugged it off. The scars looked worse in natural light. Thick, ropey tissue that covered most of his left shoulder and upper arm. In some places, the skin was shiny and tight. In others, it was discolored, mottled. She could see where the grafts had been placed, where infection had tried to take hold and failed. Does it hurt? She asked. Sometimes when it rains or when I'm tired. His voice was quiet. Mostly, I don't notice anymore. Leslie traced the edge of one scar with her finger, felt him shiver under her touch. I'm so sorry, she whispered. Don't be. I'd do it again. His hand came up, covered hers. I'd burn for you 1,000 times, Leslie. Don't you know that by now? She looked up at him, at the boy who'd run into a burning building, at the man who'd spent 20 years searching, at the surgeon who'd invented a new technique to save the woman who'd raised them both. I'm not worth all that, she said. Yes? His thumb brushed her wrist, right over her pulse point. You are. And then he was kissing her, or maybe she was kissing him. Later, Leslie wouldn't be able to say who moved first. All she knew was his mouth on hers, warm and sure and tasting like coffee, and something darker, something that had been waiting 20 years to surface. His scarred arm came around her waist, pulling her closer. His other hand tangled in her hair. She made a sound, something between a gasp and a whimper. And he swallowed it, kissed her deeper, like he was trying to make up for 2 decades in a single moment. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Sebastian's forehead rested against hers. I've wanted to do that, he said roughly, since you were 16 and helped me study for the medical school entrance exams. I was 16. You were 18. I know. That is why I didn't. He pulled back slightly, his eyes searching hers. But you're not 16 anymore. No. Leslie's hands were fisted in his shirt. When had she grabbed his shirt? I'm not. And you're divorced. Very divorced. And you're here, in my arms, kissing me back. He said it like he couldn't quite believe it. Tell me I'm not dreaming this. You're not dreaming. Good. He kissed her again. Softer this time, slower. Because if this is a dream, I don't want to wake up. From upstairs came Sister Mary's voice. If you two are going to make out in my living room, at least close the curtains. The neighbors are quite conservative. They sprang apart like teenagers caught by a parent. She is supposed to be resting, Sebastian called up. I am resting with excellent hearing. A pause. Also, there is wine in the cabinet if you're going to do this properly. The good bottle, not the communion wine. Leslie buried her face in Sebastian's chest, laughing helplessly. He wrapped his arms around her, and she felt him shaking with his own laughter. I forgot how much she knows, Leslie said. She knows everything, always has. Sebastian pressed a kiss to the top of her head, which means she knew this was coming before we did. Probably. They stood there for a long moment, just holding each other. Outside, the sun was setting over the mountains, painting the sky gold and pink. Inside, Leslie felt something she hadn't felt in 15 years. Safe, home, whole. The phone calls started 3 days later. Leslie was in the garden, trying to tame the roses that had taken over the south wall. When her phone rang, she'd turned it back on that morning. A mistake. She realized now, and Ronald's name flashed on the screen. She declined the call. It rang again, immediately. Answer it, Sebastian said from where he was painting the rectory shutters. He is not going to stop until you do. Leslie wiped dirt from her hands and accepted the call. What do you want, Ronald? I'm at the airport. His voice was tight with barely controlled anger. I'll be in Switzerland in 8 hours. We need to talk. We have nothing to talk about. You disappeared for 2 weeks. You're ignoring my family. He stopped, and she heard something shuffle in the background. I hired an investigator, Leslie. I know where you are. I know who you're with. Ice slid down her spine. You did what? Dr. Sebastian Cross, cardiac surgeon, orphan, spent his childhood in some religious charity house. Ronald's voice dripped contempt. Is this who you left me for? Some nobody with a savior complex? Sebastian had stopped painting. He was watching her now, his expression carefully neutral. I didn't leave you for anyone, Leslie said, keeping her voice steady. I left you because our marriage was a lie. It was a partnership, a good one, until you decided to throw it away. A partnership. Leslie laughed bitterly. Ronald, you controlled everything. Where we lived, who we socialized with, what cases I could take. That is not a partnership. That is ownership. I protected you. I gave you stability, status, everything you could have wanted, except a choice. Leslie's hand tightened on the phone. You never gave me a choice. And he does? Ronald's voice went sharp. This surgeon who has been stalking you for 20 years, who manipulated you into flying across an ocean. That is not choice, Leslie. That is obsession. He is not. I'm getting on the plane. We'll discuss this in person. Don't come here, Ronald. Try to stop me. The line went dead. Leslie stood there, staring at her phone. Her hands were shaking. He is coming, Sebastian said quietly. Yes, do you want him to? No. She looked up at Sebastian, at his paint and splattered shirt and patient eyes. But he won't listen. He never does. Sebastian set down his brush, crossed to her. Then we'll deal with it together. This isn't your problem. You're not a problem, Leslie. He paused, choosing his words carefully. You're the reason I get up in the morning. Notice how Sebastian doesn't say, you are my reason, or make it possessive. He just states a fact about his own life. No demands, no conditions, just you exist. Therefore, my life has meaning. Ronald could never. The reason I became a surgeon. The reason I didn't give up when every hospital rejected me for being from Hope House. When patients looked at my scars and asked for a different doctor. When your family paid me off and told me to disappear. His hand cupped her cheek. So yes, this is absolutely my problem, because anything that hurts you hurts me too. Before Leslie could respond, Sister Mary's voice called from the house. Leslie, phone for you. It is a woman who says she is your mother, Zaninzan-law. Leslie and Sebastian exchanged a look. Ex-Dan-mother, Zaninzan-law, Leslie muttered, heading inside. Sister Mary handed her the cordless phone with an expression that said she'd already formed an opinion about the caller. Margaret, Leslie said, don't hang up. Margaret's voice was clipped professional. I know you're angry, but we need to discuss this situation rationally. What situation? Ronald tells me you've been compromised by this Dr. Cross, that he has manipulated you into some kind of... I'm going to stop you right there. Leslie's voice went cold. Nothing about my relationship with Sebastian is a manipulation, and nothing about my marriage to your son was rational. So if you're calling to convince me to come back, save your breath. I'm calling, Margaret said carefully, because I made a mistake 20 years ago. Leslie went still. Sebastian, who'd followed her inside, froze in the doorway. I thought I was protecting you, Margaret continued. You were a traumatized child who needed structure, discipline, a path forward. That boy, Sebastian, he was a distraction, an emotional complication that would have derailed everything I'd planned for you. You mean everything you'd planned to take credit for? A pause. That is not entirely unfair. Margaret sighed, and for the first time, she sounded old. I saw potential in you, Leslie. Brilliant, driven, ambitious, everything I'd wanted to be before I married Harrison. When I pulled you out of Hope House, I saw a chance to create something perfect. I'm not a project. No, you're a person. One I failed to see clearly. Another pause. Sebastian Cross saved your life. I repaid him by erasing you from his world and him from yours. That was wrong. Leslie's throat tightened. Why are you telling me this now? Because Ronald is on his way to you, and he is not going in a rational state of mind. He is hurt, angry, embarrassed. The divorce made him look weak in front of his colleagues. Margaret's voice dropped. And when Ronald feels weak, he lashes out. I know my son, Leslie. I know what he is capable of. Are you saying he is dangerous? I'm saying he is a Harrison. We don't lose gracefully. A beat. I've already called my lawyers. They're drawing up papers that will prevent Ronald from making any claims on your assets, your career, anything. He won't be able to touch you financially. Why would you do that? Because I owe you, and because, Margaret's voice softened slightly, because you deserve better than what we gave you, even if that better is a cardiac surgeon from a religious orphanage. Despite everything, Leslie almost smiled. He is the head of cardiac surgery at one of Europe's top hospitals. Yes, I looked him up. His credentials are impressive. A pause. Tell him I'm sorry for what I did, and tell him the money I gave him for medical school. Consider it a gift, not a bribe. He earned every cent. The line went dead. Leslie set down the phone slowly. What did she say? Sebastian asked. That she is sorry, that Ronald might be dangerous, that you deserved the scholarship. Leslie looked at him, and that we need to be careful. I'm not afraid of Ronald Harrison. Maybe you should be. Leslie crossed to the window, looking out at the mountains. The Harrisons don't just have money. They have connections, lawyers, investigators. If Ronald wants to make trouble, let him try. Sebastian came up behind her, his hands settling on her shoulders. I didn't spend 20 years looking for you, just to lose you to some entitled lawyer with a superiority complex. He could hurt you. Professionally, I mean spread rumors, damage your reputation, Leslie. Sebastian turned her to face him. I grew up and I have scars covering half my body. I fought for every single thing I have. My education, my career, my position. Some rich American threatening me. He shook his head. I've survived worse. I don't want you to have to survive this. Too late. You're stuck with me now. He kissed her forehead. Besides, Sister Mary would be furious if I let the Harrisons win. She has invested a lot of time in making sure we ended up together. As if summoned, Sister Mary appeared in the doorway. Summon and mention my name? How much did you hear? Leslie asked. Enough to know that boy needs a good talking Xantu. Sister Mary settled into her armchair, looking surprisingly robust for someone who'd had major surgery 10 days ago. When does he arrive? Tonight, probably. Maybe tomorrow morning. Good, that gives us time to prepare. Sister Mary's eyes glinted. Sebastian, call Father Pietro. Tell him we might need a witness. Leslie, make tea. We're going to plan this properly. Plan what? Leslie asked. Your defense, dear. The Harrisons think they can bully you back into line. We're going to show them exactly why that is a mistake. Sister Mary smiled. After all, you're not just some orphan girl they rescued anymore. You're a physician, a professional, and most importantly, you're loved by people who actually see you for who you are. Leslie felt something crack in her chest, not breaking, opening, like a door that had been locked for 15 years suddenly swinging wide. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet. Wait until you see what I have planned for that pompous lawyer. Sister Mary's smile turned wicked. I've been dealing with entitled men my entire life, dear. Trust me, I know exactly how to handle them. Sebastian caught Leslie's eye, and she saw her own disbelief reflected there. Sister Mary, barely 2 weeks post-Jan surgery, was planning battle strategy like a general. Should you be getting this worked up? Leslie asked carefully. My dear girl, I just got a new heart valve. I'm feeling better than I have in years. Sister Mary waved a dismissive hand. Besides, this is important. You've been running from the Harrisons for 15 years. It is time to stop running and start fighting back. Leslie wanted to argue, wanted to say she wasn't worth all this trouble, that maybe it would be easier to just talk to Ronald calmly, reasonably. But one look at Sebastian's face, determined, protective, absolutely unwilling to back down. And she knew there was no going back, no smoothing things over, no pretending the last 2 weeks hadn't changed everything. Now she just had to defend it. All right, Leslie said. What is the plan? Sister Mary's smile was pure triumph. First, we call the police. Make sure there is a record of the harassment, the threats. Then we gather every witness who saw you and Ronald together. Colleagues, friends, anyone who can testify to how he treated you. She ticked items off on her fingers. We document everything, the controlling behavior, the financial manipulation, his family's interference. And then, she paused dramatically, we let him come. Let him come, Leslie repeated. Of course, let him fly all this way. Let him arrive angry and jets and lagged and absolutely certain he is going to intimidate you into submission. Sister Mary's eyes gleamed. And then we show him exactly who you've become, not his wife. Not Margaret's project, but a woman who makes her own choices, and doesn't apologize for them. Sebastian was grinning now. I love it. Of course you do, you're a smart boy. Sister Mary reached for the phone. Now, let's make those calls. We have less than 12 hours to prepare, and I want everything perfect. Leslie watched her dial, marveling at how quickly Sister Mary had shifted from patient to general. This was the woman who'd run Hope House for 40 years, who'd faced down bureaucrats and donors and difficult children without ever backing down. No wonder the Harrisons had wanted to get Leslie away from her. Sister Mary had taught her to be strong, and the Harrisons needed her weak. Leslie? Sebastian's voice pulled her back. You okay? Yay? She took his hand, laced their fingers together. Actually, I think I am. For the first time in 15 years, she wasn't afraid of what came next. She was ready for it. Ronald arrived at 10 o'clock the following morning. Leslie watched from the rectory window as a black Mercedes pulled up the narrow road. The car looked absurdly out of place against the stone cottage and wildflower garden. Too sleek, too expensive too, Harrison. He is here, she said quietly. Sebastian came to stand beside her. He dressed carefully that morning. Pressed shirt, good slacks, his hospital ID still clipped to his belt. Looking every inch the respected surgeon he was. Ready? He asked. No, but let's do this anyway. Sister Mary was already at the door. She'd insisted on being present, despite Leslie's protests about her recovery. Now she stood straight, sandbagged, and formidable, looking like she could face down armies. Ronald got out of the... Even from a distance, Leslie could see the tension in his shoulders, the tight set of his jaw. He dressed for intimidation too, full suit despite the warm weather, expensive watch glinting in the morning sun. He knocked sharply on the door. Sister Mary opened it. Mr. Harrison, how kind of you to travel so far. Ronald's eyes swept past her, landing on Leslie. We need to talk alone. I'm afraid that is not possible, Sister Mary said pleasantly. Leslie is my guest, and this is my home. Any conversation happens here, with witnesses present. This is a private matter between husband and wife, ex-Jan husband, Sebastian said, stepping into view. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks ago. Ronald's gaze shifted to Sebastian, and something ugly flickered across his face. You must be Dr. Cross, the childhood friend, among other things. Sebastian's voice was level, professional. Would you like to come in, or are you planning to conduct this conversation on the doorstep? For a moment, Leslie thought Ronald might refuse. Then he stepped inside, his eyes immediately cataloging everything: the simple furniture, the religious icons, the photos of Hope House children. So this is where you came from, he said. I always wondered what you were hiding. I wasn't hiding anything, Leslie said. Your mother erased it. Ronald's jaw tightened. My mother gave you a life, opportunities, a future. Your mother gave me a cage and called it freedom. Leslie crossed her arms. Why are you here, Ronald? To bring you home. This is home. No. He gestured dismissively at the cottage. This is where you spent a few miserable years before my mother rescued you. Home is Boston. Our house, our life, your life, Leslie interrupted. I was just a prop in it, the perfect wife with the perfect credentials to make you look good at firm functions. That is not fair, isn't it? Leslie felt anger rising, hot and clean. Name one decision we made together, one choice where you actually asked what I wanted. Ronald stared at her. Where we lived, you chose the house. Our social calendar, your mother planned everything. Your career, you vetoed every job offer that didn't fit your image of what a Harrison wife should do. Leslie's voice shook. I wanted to work in trauma. You said it was too dangerous, too unpredictable. I wanted to teach. You said it didn't pay enough. I wanted to do international medical work. And I said it was impractical. You have responsibilities, Leslie. To me, to my family. I have responsibilities to myself. The words burst out of her, and I forgot that. For 15 years, I forgot that I'm allowed to want things, to make my own choices, to be something other than what everyone else needs me to be. Ronald's face had gone red. This is his fault. He has been manipulating you. I'm standing right here, Sebastian said quietly. If you have something to say to me, say it directly. Ronald rounded on him. Fine, you're a fraud, an opportunist who saw a vulnerable woman and decided to play the long game, 20 years of stalking. I never stalked anyone, Sebastian said, his voice still calm. I looked for Leslie because I loved her. I still love her, and unlike you, I don't need to control her to feel secure in that. Love? Ronald laughed harshly. You don't even know her. The real her, not some childhood memory. She is brilliant, ambitious, driven. She needs someone who can match that. Someone with the same background, the same goals. Summoning rich, you mean, Sister Mary interjected. Summoning from the right family with the right connections, someone who won't embarrass the Harrisons at cocktail parties. Ronald's eyes narrowed. Who are you, Sister Mary Catherine Brennan? I ran Hope House for 40 years. I know exactly who you are, Mr. Harrison. And more importantly, I know who Leslie is, which is more than you ever bothered to learn. I gave her everything. You gave her a prison and called it a palace. Sister Mary's voice was sharp. I've seen it before, you know. Rich men who marry women they see as projects. Fix them up, show them off, congratulate themselves on their generosity. But the moment those women want something for themselves, the moment they dare to have opinions, desires, dreams that don't align with their husband's plans. She shook her head. Then the generosity evaporates. All that is left is control. You don't know what you're talking about, don't I? Tell me, Mr. Harrison, when was the last time you asked Leslie what she wanted? Not what she should want, not what would be good for your career or your family. Just what makes her happy. Ronald opened his mouth, closed it. His gaze shifted to Leslie, and for just a second, she saw genuine confusion in his eyes. He didn't know. He honestly had no idea. I wanted to work in cardiac anesthesiology, Leslie said quietly. Hides and risk cases, the surgeries that need the most skill. You told me it was too stressful. I was trying to protect you. I wanted children. You said we should wait until your partnership came through. That was 8 years ago. Ronald flinched. I wanted to learn Italian, travel to Florence, see the art museums. Leslie's voice was steady now. You said it was frivolous, that we had better uses for vacation time. Leslie, I wanted to matter, to be seen, to be loved for who I am, not who I could be shaped into. She took a breath. And you never once asked what that looked like. You just assumed you knew better. The silence stretched. Ronald looked at her, really looked at her, and something shifted, not understanding exactly, but maybe the beginning of it. You're not coming back, he said finally. No. Because of him. He nodded toward Sebastian. Because of me, Leslie corrected. Sebastian is part of it. Yes, but even if he weren't here, I still wouldn't come back, because I finally remembered something I forgot. What is that? That I'm worth more than being someone's perfect accessory. Leslie's voice was firm. I'm a doctor, a damn good one. I saved lives while you were billing hours and networking, and I did it despite your family treating my career like a hobby, despite your mother using me as a legacy project, despite you making every decision like I was incapable of knowing my own mind. She crossed to Sebastian. took his hand. Sebastian spent 20 years looking for me, not to control me or fix me or improve me, just to find me, to make sure I was okay. And when he finally did, she squeezed Sebastian's fingers. He didn't demand anything, didn't try to force his way back into my life. He just waited until I was ready to remember who I used to be. This is insane, Ronald said, but his voice had lost its edge. You're throwing away everything we built. You built. I was just along for the ride. Leslie released Sebastian's hand, stepped toward Ronald. I don't hate you. I don't even blame you. Really? You were raised to think this is how marriage works, that love is about control and status and making the right choices for the right reasons. She paused. But that is not love, Ronald. That is ownership. And I'm done being owned. Ronald stared at her for a long moment. Then he pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. My mother thought you might say that. She had her lawyers draw these up. He held out the envelope. You sign, you walk away with nothing. No alimony, no claims on my assets. Nothing. Leslie took the envelope, opened it. The papers inside were exactly what he described. A clean break, no financial entanglement. She'd leave the marriage with what she came in with, her medical degree and her skills. It should have felt like losing. Instead, it felt like freedom. Where do I sign? She asked. Ronald blinked. You're not going to fight this. Why would I? I don't want your money, Ronald. I never did. She signs away 15 years of security without hesitation. Turns out the cage was never protection. It was just expensive. The fastest way to spot someone who is actually free. Watch what they're willing to walk away from. Leslie pulled out a pen. I want my life back, and you can't give me that. You can only stop taking it. She signed quickly, dated it, handed the papers back. Ronald looked at them like he couldn't quite believe what had just happened. That is it, 15 years, and you're just done. I was done the moment I got on the plane to come here. Leslie's voice was gentle. I'm sorry it took me so long to admit it. For a moment, she thought Ronald might argue, fight harder, make threats, do something. Instead, he just nodded slowly. I hope you know what you're doing, he said. So do I. Leslie smiled slightly. But at least it is my choice to make. Ronald looked at Sebastian. Take care of her. I will. No. Leslie stepped between them. I'll take care of myself. Sebastian will just be there while I do it. Sebastian's hand found her lower back, steady and warm. What she said, Ronald's laugh was bitter, right, of course. He headed for the door, then paused. For what it is worth, Leslie, you were a good wife. I'm sorry I wasn't a better husband. He left without waiting for a response. Leslie watched through the window as he got in the Mercedes, as the car pulled away and disappeared down the mountain road, taking with it 15 years of her life. She should have felt sad or angry or something. Instead, she just felt light. You okay? Sebastian asked quietly. Yeah, Leslie turned to face him. Actually, I'm perfect, Sister Mary snorted. That went easier than expected. I had a whole speech prepared. I'm almost disappointed we didn't get to use it, Leslie said. Save it for the next rich fool who tries to cage you. Sister Mary settled back into her chair with a satisfied sigh. Now, who wants lunch? I'm thinking we celebrate with something completely inappropriate for my cardiac recovery. Sister Mary, Leslie started. Tiramisu, Sister Mary said firmly, with real espresso and mascarpone doctor's orders. Sebastian laughed. That is not how doctor's orders work. It is today. Now go into town and get me my tiramisu before I change my mind and demand something with more sugar. Leslie caught Sebastian's eye. He was smiling, really smiling, the way she remembered from when they were kids and had just gotten away with something. Come on, she said. Let's get the woman her tiramisu. They drove into town together, windows down, mountain air rushing past. Leslie's phone was off. Her divorce papers were signed. Her life, her real life, was finally beginning. "Thank you," she said as they pulled into the village square. "For what? For not giving up. For looking for me, for being patient." Leslie turned to face him. "For reminding me who I was before the Harrisons tried to erase it." Sebastian reached over, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "You would have remembered eventually." "Maybe, but it is nice I didn't have to do it alone." He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they pulled apart, he was grinning. "What?" Leslie asked. "Just thinking. 20 years I waited for this, for you." He shook his head. "Totally worth it. Sap. Your sap." "Yeah." Leslie kissed him again. "My sap." They got the tiramisu. They drove back to the cottage. They spent the afternoon in Sister Mary's garden, weeding and planting and talking about everything and nothing. And for the first time in 15 years, Leslie felt like herself. Not Dr. Leslie Harrison, trophy wife and medical prodigy. Just Leslie, orphan survivor. Doctor woman who'd been lost and found her way home. It was enough. It was everything. 1 year later, Leslie stood in the operating room at University Hospital Zurich, hands steady as she adjusted the anesthesia for the patient on the table. Across from her, Sebastian worked with his usual precision, his fingers moving through the delicate cardiac repair, like he was conducting a symphony. "Vitals?" he asked without looking up. "Perfect," Leslie replied. "Heart rate steady at 70/2, blood pressure, holding at Yayalin over Tishir." "Good, I'm almost through the valve replacement." Leslie watched him work, still marveling at how seamlessly they moved together in the OR. In the past year, they'd become the hospital's go-to team for the most complex cardiac cases. Sebastian's surgical genius combined with Leslie's anesthesia expertise, creating outcomes that other departments envied. The hospital had tried to separate them at first. Too much potential for conflict. The administrators said personal relationships in the OR were risky. Then they'd seen the numbers. Complication rates down by 30%. Success rates up by 20%. Patient satisfaction through the roof. Now, nobody questioned it. "Suture," Sebastian said, and his nurse handed him the silk thread. Leslie made a minor adjustment to the gas mixture, her eyes never leaving the monitors. This patient, a 60-year-old woman with advanced mitral valve disease, reminded her of Sister Mary. Same fierce independence, same refusal to slow down, despite medical advice. Sister Mary was doing well, incidentally, back to running Hope House part-time time, mentoring a new generation of orphans, and occasionally calling to demand updates on her children's progress. Last month, she'd officiated when Leslie and Sebastian finally made it official at a small ceremony in the cottage garden. Father Pietro had assisted, the Hope House kids had attended, and even a few of Leslie's former colleagues from Boston had flown over. Margaret Harrison had sent flowers. Ronald had sent nothing, which was fine. The Harrisons were part of Leslie's past now, a chapter closed. "Almost done," Sebastian said. "How is she looking?" "Rock solid." "You can start closing whenever you're ready." 20 minutes later, the patient was stable and headed to recovery. Leslie and Sebastian stripped off their gloves and gowns, exhaustion and satisfaction mixing in equal measure. "That went well," Leslie said. "It always does with you." Sebastian caught her hand as they walked toward the surgeon's lounge. "Coffee." "Please, I have 3 more procedures this afternoon." They settled into their usual corner of the lounge, the one with the good light and the comfortable chairs. This had become their routine, debriefing after surgeries, discussing difficult cases, occasionally just sitting in companionable silence. "Oh," Sebastian said, pulling out his phone. Sister Mary sent photos. The new wing at Hope House is finished. Leslie leaned over to look. The photo showed a bright, modern building connected to the original structure, new dormitories, a proper medical clinic, updated classrooms, all funded by a very large anonymous donation that had arrived 6 months ago. Leslie smiled, thinking of Margaret's terse note that had accompanied the wire transfer, considerate back payment for 20 years of stolen letters. "It looks amazing," Leslie said. "They're naming it after you, the Leslie Cross Medical Wing." "I told her not to do that. And since when does Sister Mary listen to what people tell her not to do?" Sebastian grinned. "Besides, you earned it. That grant proposal you wrote brought in enough funding for the next 5 years." Leslie had started consulting for Hope House 3 months ago, helping them expand their medical services, training their staff, creating partnerships with local hospitals. It felt good, using her skills to help the place that had saved her. Coming full circle, Dr. Cross. A nurse poked her head into the lounge. "You have a visitor. Says it is urgent." Leslie and Sebastian exchanged a look. "I'm not expecting anyone," she said. "Neither am I." They headed to the visitor area together and stopped short. A teenage girl sat in one of the chairs, maybe 16, with dark hair pulled into a messy ponytail and eyes that looked too old for her face. She stood when she saw them. "Dr. Cross?" she asked, looking at Leslie. "Yes, my name is Sophia Bellucci. I'm from Hope House. Sister Mary said you might be able to help me." Leslie felt something familiar click into place. The way the girl held herself, defensive but hopeful. The carefully blank expression hiding desperation underneath. She'd looked exactly like that 25 years ago. "What do you need?" Leslie asked gently. Sophia pulled a folder from her backpack. "I want to be a doctor, a surgeon, specifically. But I have no money, no family, and everyone says it is impossible for someone like me." She held out the folder. "These are my grades, my test scores, letters of recommendation from my teachers," Sister Mary said. "She said you'd understand what it is like." Leslie took the folder, opened it. The grades were extraordinary. Perfect marks in chemistry, biology, mathematics. Test scores in the 90s and 9th percentile, a letter from a science teacher that described Sophia as the most naturally gifted student I've encountered in 30 years of teaching. "You want to be a surgeon," Leslie said. "Yes. Why?" Sophia's chin lifted. "Because I'm good at it. In biology class, when we dissect specimens, I can see how everything connects, how fixing one thing affects another. And I'm not squeamish. I don't freeze up when things get complicated." She paused. "Also, Sister Mary says doctors get to save people. I'd like to save people." Sebastian was watching Leslie, his expression carefully neutral. But she knew what he was thinking. This was it, the moment they'd been waiting for. "How would you feel about spending the summer at University Hospital Zurich?" Leslie asked. Sophia blinked. "What?" "We have a program for promising pre-D and med students. Shadowing doctors, learning basic procedures, getting exposure to different specialties." Leslie glanced at Sebastian, who nodded. "Dr. Cross and I could sponsor you, get you into the program, arrange housing, help with expenses." "I can't afford full scholarship," Sebastian said. "Funded by an anonymous donor who wants to support students from Hope House." Sophia stared at them. "Why would you do this?" "Because someone did it for us," Leslie said simply. "And because Sister Mary is usually right about people." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. She dashed them away quickly, embarrassed. "I don't know what to say. Say you'll work hard, that you'll take this seriously, that you won't waste the opportunity." Leslie smiled. "And say you'll call Sister Mary and thank her for being a meddling old woman." "She is meddling," Sophia said, laughing through tears. "But she is also amazing. That she is." They spent the next hour discussing details, timing, logistics, what Sophia would need to arrange with her school. By the time she left, clutching a folder full of program information, she was practically glowing. "We just changed that kid's life," Sebastian said quietly as they watched her go. Maybe we just opened a door she would have found on her own eventually." Leslie leaned against him. "Either way, it feels good. It does." He wrapped an arm around her waist. "Sister Mary's going to be insufferable about this, you know. She'll take full credit." "She should. It was her idea. Was it, or was it yours? And you just let her think it was hers." Leslie smiled. "Does it matter?" They stood there for a moment, watching the hospital bustle around them. Doctors and nurses rushing past, patients being wheeled to surgery, families waiting for news about loved ones. This was Leslie's world now, not the sterile perfection of Boston's elite hospitals, where politics mattered more than patients, but this messy, complicated, beautiful reality where she could make a difference, where she could be herself. "I have to prep for my next case," Leslie said reluctantly. "And I have rounds." Sebastian caught her hand. "Dinner tonight, that little place by the lake, the one with the terrible wine and excellent pasta. That is the one. It is a date." Leslie kissed him quickly. "I love you. I love you too." He grinned. "Even if you did just commit us to mentoring a teenager all summer, you'll survive. With you always." Leslie headed back to the OR, her mind already shifting to her next patient. But part of her was still thinking about Sophia, about the girl she'd been at 16, lost and alone and desperate for someone to believe in her. Sister Mary had believed in her. Margaret had tried to shape her. Sebastian had never stopped looking for her. And now Leslie got to be that person for someone else, the one who opened doors, the one who said, "Yes, you can," instead of "No, you can't." The one who remembered what it felt like to need saving and chose to save others in return. Full circle, she scrubbed in for her next procedure, pulled on fresh gloves, checked her equipment. Across the OR, a different surgeon was prepping. They nodded to each other, professionals doing the work they loved. Leslie adjusted the anesthesia mask, monitored the vitals, fell into the familiar rhythm. This was who she was now, not Dr. Leslie Harrison, trophy wife, not even Leslie Cross, the lost orphan who'd been found. Just Leslie, Dr. Wife mentor, woman who'd survived fire and loss and the slow suffocation of living someone else's life. Woman who'd found her way back to herself. And that was enough. That was everything. Leslie spent 15 years being grateful to people who treated her like a renovation project. The Harrisons didn't save her. They just rebranded her trauma as their charity work. And she believed it because she was 12 and alone and didn't know she was allowed to want more than survival. But here is the thing about people who've been through fire. They know exactly what real warmth feels like. Sebastian didn't offer her a better cage. He offered her a door and said, "Your choice." That is not rescue, that is respect. Your turn. Do you think Leslie would have left eventually without Sebastian? Or did she need someone to remember who she was before the Harrisons rewrote her story? And be honest, how many of us are living in expensive cages because we're too grateful to ask for the keys? Drop your thoughts below. I am curious if this one hits as hard for you as it did for me.